A turtle in a top hat jumps straight up and lands 2 seconds later at the same place that he jumped from. How fast did he jump? And how high did he get when he jumped? So down here I got a little picture of a turtle. Had to have some fun on this one, change things up a little bit. So basically, he jumped up and came back down, and that took exactly 2.6 seconds. And there are some tricks that we can use from some previous problems here. First of all, since he started and ended at the same location, we know that the amount of time he spent traveling up equals the amount of time they spent traveling down. So his peak time happened at 1.3 seconds. Now I want you to think carefully about this. If it took him exactly 1.3 seconds to lose all of the velocity that he started with, remember, he gets 10 meters per second slower every second, right? So if it took him 1.3 seconds to lose all of his velocity, then the velocity that he started with, his initial velocity, had to be 13 meters per second. And we're already done with the first question. Now for the second part, we're going to need the average velocity trick. So if he started at a velocity of 13 and his velocity at the peak was 0, because that's just a property of being at the peak, then his average velocity on the way up had to be 6.5. Now, if you combine this information with the peak time that we already found over here, then we can calculate that the maximum height of Mr. Turtle over here was 8.5 meters. Not a bad jump. This next one's a fun one. It's a problem that I do with my class every year that I really enjoy. This comes from Mythbusters. There was one where they were testing the movie Hellboy, where he actually punched a car and caused it to flip. And the way that they tested this to see if it was doable is they got a car and they had it go forward, and they had a massive weight on top of a crane. And for this case, we'll say it was 10 meters high. I'm not sure how high it was when they actually did it on Mythbusters. And they had it drop from the crane and try to land right on the front part of this car to try to make it flip. Now, the tricky part is you have to get the timing correct. You have to drop this thing at just the right moment so that when the car reaches this location, this thing's ready to smash the front of the car. If you trigger it too early, then this thing will hit the ground before the car gets there. And if you trigger it too late, then it'll drop behind the car. So they had to get the physics correct, and they only had a couple cars to work with, so they had to calculate things correctly. By the way that it works is when the car ran over the wire, that triggered the crane to make this thing drop. So the main idea here is, where do you place this wire in order to make things work? The first thing that I'm going to calculate here is how much time it took for this big goofy thing to drop. From the moment that the crane let it go to the moment that it hit the ground, how much time did that take? In this case, this equation is going to do the trick, particularly because we know the information delta y. It fell 10 meters. Now in this case, acceleration is minus 10, just like usual. And since it fell down, we put a minus on this 10 as well. And we don't know what t is. That's what we're looking for. Also, notice that it was simply dropped from the crane. It wasn't thrown or anything like that, which means initial velocity here is 0. And 0 times t is just 0, right? Anything times t disappears. So really, it simplifies. All we have is minus 10 equals 1 half minus 10 times t squared. Now, if we work this out, we find out that it takes 1.4 seconds for this object from the moment you release it to hit the ground, which means the car is going to travel for the same 1.4 seconds as this thing's falling. Now, if the object spends 1.4 seconds falling and the car travels 20 meters every second, for every second that goes by, it travels forward 20 meters, then the total distance that the car travels while this thing's dropping is 28 meters, which means if you want to make this experiment work, you have to place the wire that the car runs over 28 meters ahead of the object that you're dropping on the car. Pretty cool stuff, and watch the episode. Get on YouTube. It was from Hellboy, where they were testing to see if you could flip a car.